it's never ending. It's relentless, and it's good and bad. And the good is like, there's always the next thing, and you can always go to chase it. And then the bad is like, oh my God, it's never ending. The last 100 meters where you are as a photographer, you don't move. And you don't move for a long period of time, because if you move, you might block someone behind you. Because of what I do, it's almost like photojournalism, and you can't predict what's going to happen. Like Oslo Diamond League last year when Jakob dived to the finishing line. No one expected that to happen. My name is Jerry. I'm originally from Shanghai, China, and I moved here when I was studying university and decided to stay here in the UK. So for me, Shanghai to London is very similar. Busy, metropolitan city, and full of vibe, and good for a young soul. And now I'm a running specifically photographer. I sometimes do videos for brands or for sports personalities. Sometimes I do for myself. That's basically bombshell of who I am.
I think everybody listening to this, they might not know who you are, but I would say they definitely have seen one of your photos, because in the running space, you've taken photos of some of the biggest moments in the sport, and also just some incredible moments in general. I want to kind of start by talking about how you got into this space, and I think probably the best way of doing that is touching on photography to start with and your passion for that, and then kind of crossing into sport and running.
Yeah, sure. So when I was little, my dad had a camera, and he used to teach me how to focus. Never talking about compositions or light, just say how to focus. And I still remember that little film camera where in the middle there is a measurement. You can measure whether it's focus or not. That's the early memory of that. And then then we were going school trips. I used to have a little film camera and taking photos, and that's probably the early memory of taking photos. And then gradually, when NBA, the Basketball Association in America, they got into China and it become really big, and every single person in China were very into basketball because of Michael Jordan. Consequently, when you look at the magazine as a young kid, you look at how they dress and what they wear, then become a sneakerhead because of Michael Jordan and the Jordan brand. So going to sneakerheads, and then social media comes along later on the years where everyone wants to showcase what shoes they've got. And then when you start collecting shoes, what you do is you take photos, post on Instagram, show everyone what you've got. It's almost like showing off. And especially limited edition ones, when you manage to get it, it's show off their skill to be able to get the shoes, also showing off what you've got. So that, and then it become more artistic, and the people find the different ways how to take photos and draw more attention. I think that become early days of what influencer was. But back then, everyone was just doing a hobby. And then that's when you start try to understanding how to make photo looks good and what to address in the photo. Then moving to pandemic, everyone's locked down. I started running. I used to go to the gym a lot, doing fitness, more sort of a HIIT class rather than running specifically. And then start running, talk to more runners. Then met Will Gooch, who was the founder of Pure Sport Run Club, and he was asking me if I would like to go to his fitness club. And I said, I haven't worked out for a while. I don't think I was able to do it, but I just picked up a new camera from Dubai. Am I able to come take some photos? Mind you, I just got the camera, and it's full-on professional camera that I've never really used it, haven't studied it properly, going there taking photos with auto setting. And the fitness club was one of those contemporary ones where it's got flashing lights. So it's very challenging for any photographer to take any photos. And then especially for me that don't even know how to use my camera, don't understand the lens focus, don't even know what sort of lens I should be using. Anyway, I just pretend that I know and took about 1,000 photos within an hour. There were about 200 photos workable. So yeah, it was great. And then Will said, would you be interested to come to a run club where it's close to where you live, Battersea Park? And there's only like 20, 30 people, feel free to take any photos. And then that's how I really started.
It's so cool because there's really something in winging it, isn't there? Like,
Yeah.
I think being able to wing it is such an important skill, and if you hadn't have said yes to going down to that club on that day because, like you say, you didn't know entirely what you were doing at that point, you hadn't really looked into it, but you took that opportunity to go down, and that is the catalyst to where you are now. Does it kind of feel like that was the start of something?
Yeah, it did. I think the worst part was when I walked in, the Will wasn't able to attend that time. So the people who organized the whole event said, "Oh, look, photographers here." And in my head, I was like, "Oh my God." And then in the entire room's full of influencers. So they have higher standard of like judging what's good or what's not. And I was just like, crap. But the one thing that I've learned back then, because I go to fitness club, well, not fitness club, I used to go to fitness class a lot. And I know what angle will look good and at what point they always show that how hard they're working. So I think like I understand what moment I should capture, but it's just hard to understand the technical side of what camera settings I should be using. But that really helped me push me to sort of study more on the camera and watching a lot of YouTube.
Becoming a sneakerhead and stuff like that and taking photos of those Jordans you were collecting. Now it's kind of come full circle, or I don't know if full circle is the right way of putting it, but it's like from shoe to shoe, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
back then it was the Jordans, and now it's the Carbons, all right?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite interesting. When I was a kid, when we go to shopping, and I always drag my parents go to Nike stores, Adidas stores, or Puma stores to just look at all the shoes and be like, oh yeah. But back then, the focus was on the basketball shoes, and I was like, oh, I wish I had those. I wish I had those. And then actually, the full circle where like I'm able to access to all the shoes, and then be able to work with the brands. And that's pretty
That's
cool.
It's really cool. When you think about it now, going from that moment to what you do now, and kind of going around the world we spoke about before we hit record on this, like at the moment is kind of organizing the diary and booking the flights and booking the events and all that stuff for the year to come. Is it strange this is now kind of like your full on life, like you're traveling the world taking photos of some of the biggest sporting moments and
Yeah,
coolest events?
yeah. I mean, it's almost like a dream come true. Um, I I love traveling. I love to go to different country to see different culture. I love sports, and during Olympics, I'll be in front of TV for however long it lasts. I watch any sports. And when I was a kid, I remember vividly. I went to watch Diamond League, and then that was like it was not Diamond League back then. It was called something else. I can't remember. Golden League, I think. Anyway, but I was like, oh, it'll be so cool to meet these athletes. And now I'm actually able to DM on Instagram, like talk to them. It's just like you never knew that sort of thing would come along. And
Yeah.
to what it is now, it's like dream come true, but still feels surreal. Every single time when I land to a new country in a taxi to the hotel from the airport, in my head I was like, wow, I can't believe this.
That process, because I think, now we've all got a camera on our phones, right? And we all, to some extent, take photos, and you take a photo and you think, oh, that's a good one. That'll look good on Instagram. But it's very different to obviously what you do. But do you get that feeling when you're taking photos? Do you know that that shot is going to be the shot? Or is it when you get home and kind of get into the edit of it that it kind of transpires to be what it can be?
Yeah, it's the latter part. So because of what I do, it's almost like photojournalism,
Yeah.
and you can't predict what's going to happen. There are scenarios in my head what could happen, like Oslo Diamond League last year when Jakob dived to the finishing line. No one expected that to happen. And the London Diamond League when there were four athletes on the, I I think it was a 1,500 meter race, 4 athletes at the beginning, everyone fall. And you don't expect things like that happens. And then that's why it's like, all of us would end up like 1,000 photos, 2,000 photos with one Diamond League, or 3,000 photos. And then you have to go through all to see if you capture those moments. And then if there was camera at Diamond League focused on all the photographers, and I'm pretty sure you will see a lot of like expressions like, yeah, oh yeah. And that's when we look back, oh yeah, got ammo. Yeah, so it's a lot of part is when you're sorting out the photos where you realize, oh wow, that's great. And then there are times where at the time when you look at the photo, you think, oh, it's not that great. But when you select it and cropped in, focus on more what you want to demonstrate, and it actually works. Those are the moments as well. It's like, yeah, that is sick. So
Do
yeah.
you have a process of going through photos? Like after one of these big events, do you have like a certain way you do it? Do you knock them down from, like you say, 1,000, 2,000 to 100 good ones, and then you go down again, and then you go down again? Or how does that work? Or is it literally like flick through gold type thing? What's the process?
So there were I think about 5 steps when you do that. Step 1 is going through one applications where you look through all the photos. And then there will be moments where, oh, this is gold, but there's continuous shots. So you would select most of them, that moment, let's say that 10-second moment, and they're about 20 photos. So you will select all of them and to select the one of the best. So these ones, the ones that step 1 is like, you remember what happened, and then you look into these photos, and then you start selecting more of other photos. Once you've done that, move them out to a folder, then you edit, then you start color grading what sort of vibe you want to go for these photos. Then you edit all the photos. Then you categorize them into different folders like atmosphere, volunteers, different race. Then you put them through different agency. Because there are times I work with Forte, I would categorize Forte athletes. Then another folders for individual athletes where I send link to them so they can use the photos as well. And then upload to Dropbox and send the stuff to every single person. Yeah, it's like what we were saying, taking photos is like, it's less than half the job. Yeah. And then there's a lot more job afterwards.
But the photography element of it is that skill that I guess allows you to do that other part of it, that kind of you're everything, aren't you? You're a athlete relations liaison, you're a brand partner, you're literally you're all of these things in one. But that skill that allows you to be that is taking that photo and being in that moment. And actually, I've never considered it like you kind of described it as, being a photojournalist. Sometimes you just say photographer, and I think I'm guilty of this, kind of not throwing that away, but that being the whole thing. But actually, when you talk about it, it's like you're a man that captures moments, aren't you? That's what you are. You're not somebody that's a photographer. It feels like that's not enough just to say photographer. If you're a man that you're capturing these special moments that then people can also view for themselves from the comfort of their own sofa, which is pretty cool, to be fair, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I think like sometimes you introduce yourself as photographer, it's just much easier to have a conversation. If you say photojournalism, and I think when you have a conversation, it's narrowed down straight away. When you say photographer, and then people be, oh, so what do you do? Like the conversation I have almost every time I take a taxi or Uber, in every single country, people say, what do you do? And I'll be like, I'm a photographer. They were like, oh, okay, what footballer have you captured? I went, no, only running.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, okay. That kind of killed the conversation.
I was saying that though. I bet now that's starting to pick up, because the change in running over the last 5 years. I bet there's a lot more people know who Josh Kerr is and Jakob Ingebrigtsen than knew about it sort of
Oh yeah.
5 years ago. Have you seen that change in the sport?
In certain countries, not everywhere. I've seen the change in the UK. most people talking about, I'm seeing London, most people talking about London Marathon. Not every single person is able to say the name of the runners or the athletes, but they're able to name the events, especially when you talk to taxi drivers. They remember the date, and the event only because they have to go around to different places, and or they have to stop working on that period of time because London Marathon. They don't go work on the London Marathon morning because there's no point. They all know all these days. So yeah, I think if you talk to the general public, there's more people interested in running these days than other time. And I was very surprised when I was in China, the how much running has taken up in China. I mean, when I was a kid, we running to us was running on track. That's what running is. There's no running on roads. But now, when I'm back in Shanghai, I can see people running on roads all the time. And then when Eliud Kipchoge was in China, the atmosphere is insane. He was treated like a superstar for footballer or a basketball player, and people call him God over there, and they all want to touch him and have his selfie. And then the number of times people saying, "Eliot, I love you so much, I love you, you're my God."
I
It's
mean,
crazy.
it's not untrue. It's not untrue, to be fair. I think I might act a little bit like that if I ever sat down with Eliud Kipchoge, to be honest. I think as well, it's that running has become, like you say, in some places a lot more popular. But I think it's not just the it's not just the running element of it, it's the everything around that, and we kind of go back to kind of the whole Jordan thing again, right? The reason that that became such a big thing was because of Michael Jordan, but it was about the fashion, it was about what it looked like, it was about kind of the time, and I feel like that a little bit with running at the moment as well. It's
Yeah.
not just the action of running that, yes, people find to help their mental health and help their fitness and help their everyday life and everything else they do. But there is also that fashionable side of it, isn't there?
Yeah.
There is the carbons, there is the kit, there is the I'm going to make sure these socks match with everything that I'm wearing, and that element of it is it's. I know some people don't like that, like so, an old school fell runner might think, oh, that's a bit too much, to be honest. But it's all helping the sport, I think, in some
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, running since the pandemic, I think it started with just the socializing type of thing. I'm gonna talk about social run club. I'm not talking about
Yeah.
athletic run club. It's all become like socialized thing. So something in common, and something quite easy to be accessed to by a lot of people. Running is cheap, but running isn't cheap. Running is cheap when you go to your social running where you can run in a basketball shoes, you can run in Crocs if you want to. You can just show up, different pace. Nowadays, you have so many different pace groups as well in different run clubs. So you can go fast, you can go slow, you can talk to people you feel comfortable with. People go on dates during run clubs. People for their first date say, let's meet at this run club and run together. There are businesses start doing run clubs within their organizations or sort of building the team morale. Like if you think about, let's say 10 years ago, I think Tough Mud was one of the activities what corporation would do for team bonding. Now they're just much easier cheaper to do. Just let's go run together every week. Let's talk about everything. Yeah, and I think mental health is a big thing as well. When you're socializing with people, you feel more relaxed. After running, you have more adrenaline, and you hit the high runner's high, and you feel more relaxed as well. At the same time, you get benefit of fitness. But fundamentally, when the running spheres become so much bigger, people want to be seen individually as well, want to see how they represent themselves. And I can see sooner or later Diamond League or any sort of or the Michael Johnson's Grand Slam, I think
Yeah.
it's going to be when the athletes walk in, would it be looking like NBA stars walking into the changing rooms where they dress up completely. If you look like sports personality over the year, how well they're all dressed. Keely's Nike dress, like it's everyone's talking about. So I think it's yes, we all doing the same movement, but individually, everyone wants to show who they are by wearing different type of clothes, different athletic look, different brand. And I think like, there are people who don't like it. That's absolutely fine because this is a society wherein you should have something everyone likes, someone dislike. And then that's balance things out.
It is. It feels like as well that the stars are becoming bigger, like the people in the sport. I mean, Keely is obviously somebody that is just completely taken off, but because of like many things, she her talent is paramount, and that's number one, and her ability on the track is obviously the number one thing. But then you've got how she uses social media, how she markets herself, like you say, things like that Nike dress, things that are like different to maybe what people have done in the past. And I think that that stardom is becoming a bigger and bigger thing. And yeah, I can see everything you've just said. I can see even things like in certain big races or certain events that brands put on, walk-ons and that sort of thing as well,
Yeah,
which I think is going to be different. But I think it's those spectacles that build the spectacle of the actual race or the actual event that I think sometimes um, make it and bring
yeah,
more eyes to it. And more eyes is better ultimately.
absolutely. And I think like the Keeley Classic would be the first demonstration of what could it be on a track event,
Yeah.
how grand it will look, what sort of experience that audience can gain from one track race. Back then it was you were just spectator. And I think now organizers try to think how do we make spectator participating the event have different experience, more immersed experience. So I think the Keeley Classic would be the first, huge event of this year for us to see what a track event can be.
Yeah, super exciting. We kind of spoke about the process of, picking a good photo or the process of, you know, bringing them down to a certain one and then the delivering of it all. That moment after delivering, like let's say you're working with a specific athlete and you've got an absolute banger, right? You know this thing is going to slap. They're going to be so happy with it. What's that feeling internally for you when you drop that into their WhatsApp or you put it in their Dropbox or, you deliver it to them and it's going to be an absolute banger when they react, with, I would imagine, a lot of thanks and a lot of praise. How does that make you feel?
Um, it feels we're aligned, and
Yeah.
I feel like it's it's almost like validation. I don't want to use the word validation, but it's almost like you giving your homework to a teacher and the teacher looked at it and went, "Oh, well done." I'm not seeking validation. That's what I'm trying to say. But at the same time, it's like acknowledgement and saying, "Oh, you've done." Yeah, I like that photo, and you do feel a little sweetness in your heart. And it's like, oh,
Yeah.
that's sweet because one photo, and I keep telling everyone, it's like we can't forget the photo. There's two components. One is the one in it, and the one is one taking it. Without either part, there won't be that moment being captured. So you got to. It's like a partnership. It's like your partner saying, "Oh, it's great. That worked really well." You feel like, "Ah, great. That's good." So
Yeah. Never thought of it like that. That's a really nice way of putting it. Yeah, because obviously I don't know who I think about more, to be honest, when I look at a picture. I don't know whether I think that's a banging picture or I think about the person in that picture. Does that make sense? I feel like that's something that everybody listening to this now can kind of take away and think about when they are looking at a photo.
yeah, I
Because
mean,
that's quite interesting.
I think even for me, the first thing you look at as the subject in the photo, you'd be like, "Oh my god, that looks great."
Yeah.
I don't think most people would think, "Oh, I want to know what's the photographer was thinking, or what he was doing, and how he was holding that pose to get a photo." And this is why on social media nowadays you see a lot of BTS and the way it looks like when a photographer is taking photos. And I can guarantee none of us look attractive. We all look awkward. Most of the photos we're taking is we in the most awkward position in our body pose. Yeah, it's not the most attractive, but it's always funny to look at it.
Leg behind your head, lying on the floor, trying
Um,
to like get the angle. You gotta get the angle.
Absolutely. Like, when we like Olympics or even the Diamond League, and we only have a small space, we'd be able to do it. And then with everyone has different cameras, you just sort of like, it's a mutual understanding from every single photographer is when the last 100 meters where you are as a photographer, you don't move. And you don't move for a long period of time, because anything, if you move, you might block someone behind you, or you might knock into someone. So we were just all kind of like knowing we have to hold this pose. If you're squatting, you're squatting for the next a minute, 2 minutes, to 3 minutes, however long it takes.
When someone asks you, Jerry, what are you training for? You're saying, I'm training to take photos. I need to hold that squat. I need to
That's
hold that
absolutely what
squat.
I say. Hence why there's a lot of when my workout, there's a lot of like glutes and squats and squats and then burpees.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because there are times where I have
Okay.
to lay down on the ground taking photos, and they have to get up and to capture the other moments.
In terms of when you look at a photo yourself, like you just mentioned about other people scrolling through Instagram or, looking through photos, how do you look at pictures? Because I know personally as, somebody that's a radio presenter day to day, when I listen to radio, all I'm doing is analyzing radio, if that makes sense. I'm just kind
Mhm.
of thinking about what they're doing, how they're structuring a link, what they're gonna, uh, how they're gonna get to the out point of the link, how they're gonna intro that song, how they're gonna tease the next thing. Like, do you do that when you look at photos? Are you constantly thinking about photos? Do you lose the joy at all of looking at photos?
I don't know. I still enjoy looking at all the photos. I do. I think the way I think now is very different from what it was. So because, when I was in the sneakerhead world, we all know the shoe, but we're looking at the background, the color, and how the person pose to draw attention, get to the shoe. But now when I look at it, first thing I look actually isn't, well, it depends what I'm looking at. If we're looking at a brand shoot, so something has been briefed on, the creative side has already been done, or we're looking at the photojournalism, which is like the events. It's two different sets of things I'll look at. So when it comes to creative side, the first thing I'll look at if we look at brand shoot, the first thing I look at is color, whether this color would draw my attention, and then I look at the meaning of these photos, like what it tried to tell, what's the story behind it, and then I look at it. Okay, where are the lighting, and what sort of camera setting it is, um, and am I able to replicate that? Can I use that as reference for something else that I want to use? So it's more sort of like study when it
Yeah.
comes to brand shoot, and the photojournalism moment is like looking at, okay, so this person captured that. Okay, what was the camera setting? And what was the angle? And how did this person get into that angle to get that photo? So when it comes to that, I would be, am I able to replicate that? Am I able to do the same settings? And do I have the access to the locations that where the photographer was? And that's what you're working towards too.
It must feel quite cool that it feels like there's a never-ending, a never-ending feel to what you do. Do you know what I mean? There is always the next thing, or there is always the next location, or the next event, or the next moment, and that must feel quite satisfying to know that there's never really an end to this. There's always something that's new and different.
Yeah. It, it- it's never ending. It's relentless, and it's good and bad.
Yeah.
And the good is like, there's always next thing, and you can always go to chase it. And then the bad is like, oh my God, it's never ending. It's like, I don't know if in school, did you have that feeling that, oh yeah, it's new year start again. I'm let's say year 10 now. Oh God, the exam coming up soon again.
Yeah.
And then you finish it, you're like, oh yeah, back to school again. And then you repeat the whole process over. It's kind of that type of feeling. But the thing is, like, you'll be looking at how can I improve this year? But then last year, what can I do differently? And I think that is encouraging, at the same time is a little bit daunting. Every time you still have that feeling of, am I able to do what I did last year and better?
Is it difficult to reflect then if it's like that constant, like, moving forward? Is it hard to look back?
It Yeah, it's very hard to look back when I would have a small short period of time to look back, say what I could have done differently. And then this is really hard for me to summarize a year what I've done. because there's so many moments that stands out for me. And there are too many moments where almost cluttered in my head. And that's why I said that this period of time is pretty good when it's quieter, where actually I can look back things, what I have done. And then yeah, it's kind of like I wish sometimes there's less what's going on. So I can have, let's say, 1 month after 3 weeks shooting, and then 1 week I can reflect and reset. Sometimes I don't have that moment. A lot of times when I reset, it was on the airplane. So I don't use Wi-Fi, and it's just kind of like, okay, rewind and relax and then think about what has past few days happened. Anything I learned from, anything that I can improve on. Yeah.
Because it is quite relentless. I'm sure, in every industry, in every business, in every walk of life, people make mistakes, right? Or things happen that you don't expect to happen. I'm sure that's happened in shoots, probably less now than when you started. But because of that relentless nature of it, I would imagine, have to let go quite quickly to if something hasn't gone quite how you would have liked it to have gone, because you're kind of on to the next thing.
Yeah.
Is that a process that you've struggled with at all over the years, that kind of letting go and moving on, or have you found that quite easy?
Um, I think I find it quite easy just
Yeah,
to, okay, move on. I think that's to do with my personality. I'm sort of a person like, if I do things a lot of times, I'll be like, it's a bit like a Nike slogan, just do it. You know, I, w- I, I will summarize and reflect on what has happened, but I won't let go.
yeah.
um, I wouldn't get hold myself and saying, "Oh my God, you could have done this way better. Why wouldn't you do that?" Because the negative feelings will reflect on your next job.
Yeah.
So you have to reset straight away, quick, and be like, "Done. Okay, move on. Let's move on to the next one." Yes, this is this I've done, and you've learned it. What can you avoid the same mistakes happen again?
That's such a skill, because that's so difficult to do, isn't it? Particularly if you're like, it's a moment that you think you could have done better in, whether that be with a camera or in business or in a sport. I think sometimes that letting go and moving forward, it's a real skill, I think.
Yeah, I think like one thing I always keep telling myself is, I think every single photographer has the same feeling when we go to events. We'll be like, okay, am I able to do this job? And a lot of times you got to tell yourself is like, this moment happened once, and when it happened. Nothing you can do about it. What's gone's gone. Just don't make that happen again.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we were forced to move on. It's not like I don't want to. I want to move on and neglect. It's almost like we were forced to move on because you've got to really immerse the next event to do well. You can't really think about what has happened in the past.
I think there are a couple of cliche questions, Jerry, that aren't really my thing, my style, but I have to ask you, having you in front of me. And those cliche questions, the first one is going to be: have you got a favorite photo? Have you got a favorite one that you've taken of a specific moment?
Yes, I do actually. The It probably wasn't the best moment for a lot of athletes, but it was. It, the reason why I'm saying it is favorite, and it's because it's unexpected,
Yeah,
and there was a lot happening, and then the photos of there is the beginning of a cluster of athletes at the beginning of the 1,500 meter last year in London Diamond League. I also submit the photo to Diamond League to say, because they were voting what favorite photos of the year, and I submit that, but it's not the what they were looking for. It's not the finishing line. It's not something that too positive because someone fell over. But I think that it's just the story it was telling is it was the last official race and big high caliber race before the Paris Olympics. So a lot of athletes put their last effort into it and see to judge their fitness and to change their strategy. And at the beginning of the race, when there's four athletes tripped over, and I think that moment no one really expected. And then also at those moments, a lot of photographers don't capture the beginning of it because it's normally quite steady. not much going on. But I was there. I managed to capture that moment where with like George Mills was jumping over someone, and then you got other athletes was on the ground, and then the other athletes were looking what's going on. It's almost like they call it Last Supper photo. So
cool.
that was probably my favorite photo so far out of all the races I've been to, because it's unexpected. And then the second one is the Jakob. He dived into the finish line to win it in front of his home audience. Despite like he's got scratch all the sides, but he won and put his life online almost. Dive into it. That was moments, but everyone captured that. I don't feel it's as special as the one that not everyone captured. So it's like for photographer as well, we're looking at how many people capture the same moment, because all of us would be able to capture the ending because we know they're coming. You have 100 cameras facing the finishing line. So I didn't submit the photo to Dominique because I know a lot of people capture the moment anyway. So that's my second favorite photo of last year.
What I love as well is you telling the story behind the photo, because the passion there is so sick to see. And I think we're all kind of guilty of this sometimes, because we're all digesting so much media all of the time, right? You're just scrolling through your phone if you're sitting on the sofa at the end of the day, and you're kind of looking at stuff and video on the surface level, really, aren't you? You're just thinking, that's nice, that's pretty, I like that, I'll get a double tap. Or, oh, that's engaged me for more than 25 seconds, I'm not used to that, that'll get a double tap. But actually these moments that you are capturing, there are big stories behind every single one, and that's what's special about what you do, I think.
Yeah. Be able to capture those and send over photos to the athletes. It, like when I was younger, I was one of those annoying people with a tell photographer, take a photo of me because I'm here. I want to remember. I want to remember this. And then now I'm on the other side. I'm voluntarily sending the photos to the athletes for them to remember those moments. And I think it means a lot to a lot of athletes, and it means a lot when they say thank you to me as well. And acknowledge who I am, and then that's quite important to me.
And I think that's probably why you are who you are, and why, you've taken some of the best photos of the last 4 or 5 years in athletics and in sport in general, and in the running world. And you've got this aura around you, which is amazing. It's because you understand that feeling, I think. And it's interesting hearing you say, I was that kid that was telling somebody to take a photo of me. You get that feeling. And
Yeah.
I think probably capturing those moments that you capture, and knowing that the people that you're capturing are going to have those feelings, that's probably one of the reasons that you do what you do, right?
Yeah, and because I come from sales background, and then I was trained to understand the other party's feeling,
Yeah.
to be able to give that feeling, fulfill their needs. And I think that's what made me understanding and coming from the same person who always wanted photos back then. I kind of get it. The feelings like, oh, they really want photos. And then, at the same time, as a photographer, when people post your photos, you feel good about it. That's acknowledgement and a validation.
We'll finish with this, man, because I've absolutely loved this. But the other question that I feel like I have to ask is that dream photo, right? That dream scenario that you could put yourself into to try and get a photo of. Does that exist? Do you have something or somewhere that you would love to be one day? Or is it kind of like, a dream state that will never really happen, but is there kind of somewhere in the future?
I think, yeah, Olympics probably would be one of the place I want to be, on the track and take photos. And it could be, to be honest, it could be any Olympics. I can even go and take a picture of archery. Just being Olympics, being able to have that, the media accreditation saying I was in the Olympics, and then that would be amazing. I think that's what the dream. And like another one I think that's going to be far, far away and then much further distance, but I really want to capture a photo of the Earth from the space.
Oh, wow.
Since I was a
sick.
kid, I always wanted it. And I always wanted to capture space. Yeah. And I do take a lot of photos of the moon, only because I just fascinated by the space.